that's now being enforced. But let's go back. It's a federal law. I understand it had to do with President Obama. So tell us about how we got to where we are.
Well, in 2012, President Obama introduced a bill, and he titled it "Moving Ahead for Progress in the 21st Century." So, and that got mandated. It was signed into law. So now you have the Arkansas Department, or the Department of Transportation, references it as MAP 21. And within MAP 21, they gave the Federal Motor Carrier Association, better to, we call it FMSCA, gave them the ability to mandate a rule where an electronic logging device must be used on commercial vehicles that are used for hauling. So not all commercial vehicles. If you're driving around in a vehicle that you're using for business, that vehicle's become a commercial vehicle. But this is a mandate for commercial vehicles used for hauling. And they're saying that if you travel more than 150 air miles, which approximately about 175 road miles, once you pass that amount, they're saying that you have to be electronically logging. And then you also have to do this more than 8 days in a row within a 30-day period. There's just all kinds of little things. But the biggest point is that commercial motor vehicle, a vehicle that's hauling becomes a commercial motor vehicle when its gross vehicle weight rating, so its GVWR, is more than 10,000 pounds. And what a lot of people didn't understand is that your 1-ton dually out there it has that gross vehicle weight. And a lot of our farmers and ranchers, a lot of our people hauling horses, cattle, pigs that are doing it for shows, that are doing it for rodeo, when they take their 1-ton truck and they hook up their trailer and load that down with the livestock that can fit in that trailer, they are a commercial motor vehicle. Wow. And a lot of them are long enough and heavy enough when you combine the truck and the trailer weight and put a load on that trailer, that not only are they a commercial motor vehicle, but they are heavy enough, meaning that their weight is more than 26,000 pounds. So when you go 26,001, you're required to obtain a commercial driver's license, a CDL, just like a regular truck driver would to run for me at Kohler Moving and Storage. Okay?
Wow.
And so if you pass, if you do more than a short haul, so if you operate more than 100 air mile radius, if it takes you more than 12 hours to start and return to the same location, if you drive more than 11 hours, you're going to have to, you've always supposed to be logging. But now they're going to require that logging to happen on an electronic logging device. So a device that's going to cost you an investment, and they're not cheap. Now, yes, some of those devices can be on a cell phone, but, that may require you to upgrade to a phone that's much more expensive than the normal, a farmer that's operating on a tight budget might be using right now. Not everyone's carrying a smartphone these days. I know that could shock some people, but they aren't. A lot of drivers in my industry, the average driver today in the household moving industry is in their 50s. They don't like a smartphone. Their fingers are big and fat, and they don't like to tap on the screen. You'd be amazed how many I find with a flip phone still.
Yeah.
That wouldn't work for this. If they don't have a van line providing that logging device for them. So you're talking about an overbearing cost, and you're talking about mandating something on these people that, quite honestly, if you talk to the Arkansas Truckers Association, they're going to tell you, and they.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts,
and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. My name is Paul Harrell, and you have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine. We want you to be a part of that. One of the ways you can do that is to call us or text us, 870-275-9799, or you can sound off on our Facebook live feed. That's facebook.com/Conduit News, facebook.com/Conduit News. I want to remind everybody I'm going to be in Mississippi County tonight, Blytheville, Arkansas. I'll be presenting alongside Conduit for Action about the legislative session last year. This is always, I guess, Mr. Josh Waters has done a great job going all across the state, speaking to all these all these Republican county committees. We'll be at the Mississippi County Republican Committee tonight, 7 o'clock, at the Bush Thornton building. That's 1594 South Division Street in Blytheville. So feel free, all of you guys in the area, feel free to come out and hear a lot of factual information about what's going on here in the state of Arkansas. Earlier this week, we produced a graphic. We did some research, and it was based on this invitation. And this is part of our coverage of the Senate special election for Senate District 16 up in the Russellville area. There are three candidates that are running in the Republican primary. There's Mr. Bob Bailey, who has been on this program. There is Breann Davis, who has not been on this program, and there's Mr. Luke Heffley. I actually spoke with Mr. Luke Heffley yesterday, and he will be on tomorrow morning at 6:33. So we will be talking to Mr. Heffley tomorrow. This invitation was circulated around. This is an invitation you see on your screen for a fundraiser for Breann Davis, and we showed you this invitation, and we showed you all of the names, all of the people who were putting this invitation or putting this fundraiser on. And so what Conduit News did was research the people who were openly hosting this fundraiser for Breann Davis. And they connected the dots. So here's the new, publication or the graphic that we produced for Breann Davis, basically showing each one of these people are lobbyists, and they're connected to certain lobbies. And so this is their chosen candidate. Breann Davis apparently is their chosen candidate. She's welcome to come on the program and debate the issues, because I really think there's a lot of listeners in her area that want to know where she stands on these issues. But as you can see, this is what we produced. Medical marijuana lobbyists. So you got lobbyists on this list: medical marijuana, healthcare, big pharma, Medicaid, gambling, alcohol, corporate welfare, internet tax, tobacco. And there's several of them that do work in both of those areas or multiple areas. And, this is who they want. This is the person that's going to protect the status quo. This is Asa Hutchinson's candidate from what it looks like. And I would love for her to come on and let's just be honest about where we stand on things, right? She here in a minute, I'm going to show you a Facebook post from her where she is saying that Arkansas Works and Obamacare are not the same thing. Really? You can't have Arkansas Works without Obamacare being the law. So we're going to talk more about that here in a minute. But when we exposed this and did some investigating, I also told you that we were going to dive into the financials of Mr. Bob Bailey as well as Mr. Luke Heffley. Okay? Now, and again, Luke is going to be on tomorrow. Let's start with Luke Heffley because, everybody's been filing their campaign contributions. And you can see here, this is, pulled from the financial report. Luke Heffley's campaign contributions are from individuals. Now, one individual's name is Mike Huckabee. Is that former Governor Mike Huckabee? I don't know. But there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's 7 people who have contributed, according to the financial report, to Mr. Luke Heffley. So there we go. That's who is supporting him. You can see the names on the screen there. You've got looks like a family member with the last name Heffley, and then a few others. Again, 7 people. So now let's look at Mr. Bob Bailey's. Now here we go. Mr. Bob Bailey, let me pull it up on mine. I'm using this bailout screen, Joe. Here we go. So if you look at Bob Bailey's campaign contributions, he has a majority of his money, a lot of his money, from political action committees. He also has a lot of money from individuals that you can see down there in this graphic. And again, this one is pulled from down there cited iReport. So look at these PACs. There's a PAC that he's being supported by. It's called ARI Structure. There's a PAC, Commerce in Action, Arkansas Business Services, Arkansas Manufacturing First, Arkansas Natural Resources, Arkansas People First, Arkansas Trade First, Commerce in Action, PAC 2. Now, full disclosure, the founders of these PACs are also the founders of this network, Conduit News. That's right, full disclosure. Being fully transparent this morning, I wanted you to know that. I wanted you to know that the founders of these organizations are the same founders behind Conduit News, the medium by which I am speaking to you today. Boy, am I grateful for that. But when you start to compare this, look at what we have here. These different PACs are about conservative government, smaller government, free enterprise, individual freedom, traditional American values, strong national defense. Now think about that for a second. Contrast that. Go back to the Breanne Davis. Contrast that with the lobbyists, as we can see. Medical marijuana, health care, big pharma, Medicaid, gambling, alcohol, corporate welfare, not free enterprise, corporate welfare, the internet tax, increasing taxes, and tobacco. Now, again, as I said the other day, there is absolutely nothing wrong in terms of legality with lobbyists. This is the system we have. You have industries that are paying people. The people on this list throwing this fundraiser for Breanne Davis are being paid. They are making money off of the industries that they support. Now go back to Bob Bailey's contributions. Go back to this graphic. Tell me who gets paid, who makes money for advocating for limited government. Now you could say, well, if you have lower taxes, but that's not for just one person. That's not for a specific tobacco, alcohol, Medicaid. No. If we have lower taxes and you do it the right way, the fair way, and you treat everybody equal under the law, everybody gets to keep more of their own money. So you could say, yeah, okay, what? We have more freedom to the people? Okay. But aside from those benefits that are obvious when you have more freedom for everybody instead of, carving out financial niches for this industry or for that industry, who is paying who here? The bottom line is the message that you're hearing right now, people are paying to get it out. They're not making any money off of this because it's not profitable. It's not profitable to advocate for limited government and freedom. It's not as profitable as saying, hey, let's get a lobbyist in there and let's use the government to make sure that we maintain a taxpayer-funded revenue to insurance companies. Whoa, that's very profitable. Can you think about it? I mean, these lobbyists, they're taking the taxpayer money that they're already getting. These companies are taking the taxpayer money that they're already getting. They're siphoning off a portion of that to go fund a lobbyist down at the Marble Palace to make sure the taxpayer-funded revenue stream continues. There's a lot of money in that, folks. We have an uphill battle. And this whole investigative reporting, getting into these financials, it started because somebody was, talking on Facebook, and it wasn't even a big deal, wasn't even really going anywhere, but it did spark an idea. Let's compare the lobbyists who are supporting Breanne Davis for this special election in Senate District 16. And this is a big deal. The reason I'm focusing so much on this, folks, is because this is a power struggle. This is a race between the people and ordinary folks versus the gatekeepers of the Marble Palace bubble, the Marble Palace elite. That's what this is. It's what every race in Arkansas boils down to, especially now that there's not really a general election. Your general election are your Republican primaries, especially in a district like District 16. The Republican's going to win. The Republican's going to win. Barring some sort of, fluke, personal crisis or whatever, the Republican's going to win. So this is where ideas matter, okay? This is where we actually get to govern ourselves. The people's voice gets to be heard in these primaries. So it's very important that we try to be as transparent as possible, and we lay out, well, what are your goals? What are your goals? Are you going down there to protect the status quo, the power structures that have been in place since Bill and Hillary Clinton were running around Arkansas, the same power structures and bureaucracies and lobbyists and special interests that that began the political careers that almost put two, not one, but two Clintons in the White House? It's pretty straightforward. The people want reforms. The people want a conservative government, a smaller government, a government that promotes free enterprise, individual freedom, traditional American values, strong national defense. These are what these PACs that have given money to Bob Bailey's campaign. That's what they're about. Back to the Breanne Davis invitation. Breanne Davis, the people that have thrown this fundraiser for her. They are about medical marijuana, health care, big pharma, Medicaid, gambling, alcohol, corporate welfare, internet tax, and tobacco. The comparisons are they just reveal a stark contrast. How about that? A very, very stark contrast. Anyway, that is what I wanted to tell you today. And on that, let's go to this Facebook post, shall we? So we played a little bit of this for you the other day. This was a Facebook post. You had Breanne Davis for State Senate, and she was, she's standing in a field talking. And then on this Facebook video, you have a guy named Gary. Gary, man, how do you pronounce that last name? That is a doozy. Siwiec. Asks Breanne, what is your position on Obamacare? Arkansas works. And somebody in the comments says advocates it. That person's name is Kat. And then Gary says, I want to hear from Breanne. Thank you. So eventually Breanne Davis responds. This is what she says. Breanne Davis writes, Gary, I apologize in advance for the long answer. But anything healthcare related is not a simple answer. Obamacare and Arkansas Works, she writes, are not the same thing. Stop. Yes, they are. You can't have one without the other. Folks, that is not an accurate statement. That is a lie that members of the establishment have been perpetuating since 2013. Although that back then it was called the private option. And they tried to say that they weren't implementing Obamacare when in fact they are. Governor Asa Hutchinson admits it himself. He goes to, he says one thing in Arkansas, says it's not the same thing. And then 2 weeks later, in 2016, 2 weeks later, he goes out and he let's see, I guess was that 2015? No, 2016, yeah. 2 weeks later, he goes to a national conference and admits that, Medicaid expansion is a key pillar of Obamacare. And we have the audio of it, and we're not going to have time in this segment to get into it. But I mean, it's all documented, folks. But so she writes that Obamacare and Arkansas Works are not the same thing. Then she says there are people working hard to confuse us and tell us they are the same. That is not factual. No, let me tell you something. This is infuriating to me. And I guess who do you want to believe? I mean, I'm saying it's not factual. I'm saying her position is not factual. She's saying my position is not factual. Who going to believe? I mean, who do you trust, folks? who do you trust? I mean, I have been watching this government program be a disaster since 2013. Something tells me that some of the people in this race had no idea what was going on in 2013, how the Republicans betrayed conservatives in this state and went along with the majority of all of the Democrats. I've been watching this. I have been here seeing it with my own eyes, and there is nothing that has confirmed my worldview as a limited government conservative more than watching everything about this program be a disaster, and everything that Republicans like Breanne Davis apparently have said and promised be completely untrue about what this program is and what it will be. It's all been a scam, a giant scam. It is a fraud. It has been perpetuated against the people of Arkansas, and it's an embarrassment. Folks, this was about taking government money and giving it to insurance companies to the tune of $500 a month per person. We've had as many as 330,000 people on this program. We were never supposed to have more than 215,000 people on the program, according to their amazingly accurate government estimates. We were supposed to have an amazing verification program that they never could work. They spent that never could get it to work. They spent $200 million on software and then fired a company with no clawback procedures. It has been one disaster after another. Arkansas was in violation of federal law by not doing the redeterminations. And then the DHS came back and they got the government to write them some retroactive letter, and it was back when Obama was in office. The fact that Republicans did what they did in this state put a smile on Barack Obama's face, that he found a way to get us to accept the beginning of socialized medicine. And we have a Senate candidate in Senate District 16 that is so enamored by the establishment that she's not thinking and being able to observe where we were and where we are. And instead, we're just going to protect the status quo, and we're going to say, Arkansas Works and Obamacare are not the same thing. No, I'm sorry. No, we are way past that. We are way past perpetuating. You think you got to win? You got to say, I'm against Obamacare, but I'm for Arkansas Works, and they're not the same thing. Okay, well, what you're doing is you're saying, I have to take the conservative position, or I at least have to tell people that I'm taking the conservative position. But let's be clear, there is nothing conservative about a welfare program for able-to-work adults. Period. Never has been, never will be. Not to mention, it all takes place under the umbrella of Barack Obama's signature domestic achievement. And we are the only state in the South that did this. I would like for Breanne Davis to answer this. If it's not Obamacare, why did Hillary Clinton come to Arkansas and praise Republicans and Democrats that implemented it? I'll have that audio for you when we come back.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
It's a PHP parody.
Hey, man, you got any of that marble rock?
Yeah, I've got the hookup.
Thanks. I need a fix real bad. I'm itching to grow some government.
How much you need?
I'm gonna need a taxpayer's dime bag.
No problem, sir. 1 taxpayer dime of marble rock. Enjoy.
Thanks, man. They don't call it Little Rock for nothing. Am I right?
Did you know your state representative or state senator may be addicted to growing government? The drug is called marble rock, and too much of it will cause marble fever. Watch for the warning signs. Does your legislator suddenly display a lack of humility when faced with basic questions? Does he or she suddenly develop hubris and pride that was not present during the campaign for office? These are signs they might be smoking the terrible drug, marble rock. The solution? Detox. Vote for detox. Vote to send them home for their own good. Warning! Some politicians once voted out of office will not go home and stay in Little Rock to get their fix by lobbying, also known as the Burris Syndrome.
PHP parody. Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
You know, I really should lead with this. Every single time we get in a debate between the Republicans in Arkansas about the merits of this program, Medicaid expansion, that is this albatross around our state budget, I really should just lead with this, because this is all you need to know. Hillary Clinton, when she was running for president, came to Little Rock, and she praised Arkansas for implementing Obamacare. So if ASA or anybody else says that Arkansas works is not the same thing as Obamacare, it's ridiculous. They're insulting your intelligence. If any candidate like Breann Davis says it's not the same thing, just ask her, why did Hillary Clinton come to Little Rock and say this?
I got to tell you, it gives me great joy to go around bragging about Bill Clinton and Barack Obama every chance I get.
I mean, it's, and then she went on to say this.
And look, I'm going to brag on Arkansas again. This state, in a bipartisan agreement, decided to expand access to Medicaid. I mean,
she goes on, and by the way, she actually went on. I had this at the tip of my fingers. I'm going to find the full clip for you because you need to hear it. And she wants to brag on Arkansas because we expanded Medicaid. And, you know, whether you call it the private option or you get Asa Hutchinson, a Republican in name only who wants to rename it, and now he's trying to shield with his coattails, his chosen candidates, the lobbyist chosen candidates, and telling them, no, you just got to say that it's not the same thing and take the conservative position, even though you're not taking the conservative position here. Back in a minute.
Told me, because I called them, well, they were always supposed to be logging. Well, most of these people didn't know that.
Yeah.
Most of these people didn't know that their vehicle weight was requiring them to have a CDL to operate.
Right, yeah, because this was passed in 2012. Nobody was enforcing it here in Arkansas. So practically speaking, you're a farmer. You're going to transport your your livestock, and you're saying now that you're going to transport your livestock. You like you said, you've hooked up your one ton truck. You got the trailer. Now you're supposed to have a CDL and a logging device installed in your car, and the reason this is a big deal, folks, is because they're telling people now. I mean, I was talking to somebody who was saying, they were these trucks were pulling into like a livestock show of some kind, like kind of a recreational deal, and you'll have to excuse my ignorance of that, but they had people there telling them, hey, we're about to start enforcing this. They're about to start enforcing, and you're going to get a huge ticket if you don't start to make these changes. And so this could possibly affect a whole lot of Arkansans that have no idea what's coming.
Absolutely. And here's where it gets really dicey for these people. For me, I already deal with this on a daily basis. My drivers are only allowed 14 hours of service time. They can only drive for 8 hours straight before taking a mandated 30-minute break, and then they can drive another 4 hours. So they're only allowed to drive 11 hours, and then they can have 3 hours still on the clock. Well, in my industry, we're moving people. That could mean he's got 3 hours to get his trailer cleaned up, or he's got 3 hours where he can have 3 hours of unloading time, and then he'd have to stop. Okay, 14 hours of service. I'm not talking about drive time. And a lot of these people at the meeting we were at last night, I don't believe they came away understanding this. So they get 11 hours total of drive time. 3 hours more of service time, which is work time. And then you are mandated to take 10 consecutive hours off. That means you're supposed to not work. So for the farmer in hay season, he's only allowed if his rig is heavy enough to have to operate underneath this law. They have just changed the way he's allowed to work his farm, because if he worked more than 14 hours that day, he's illegal. Okay, and because we actually have to put that the day before, if we start logging and we've not been logging,
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back. Go back to this Facebook post. Again, this is a Republican candidate for the special election, Senate District 16, Breanne Davis. We talked about it this entire half hour. We dived into her funding. We dived into Bob Bailey's funding and Luke Heffley's funding. It's a three-way primary up there. It's fast approaching the special election, and it's a big deal because you've got a big government backed status quo lobbyist backed candidate. That person appears to be Breanne Davis. She's welcome to come on the program to talk, but I don't think she's going to. She was scheduled to come on before the first of the year, and then she canceled. She said she was going to get back to me to come back on, and she hasn't done that. In the meantime, we have interviewed Bob Bailey twice, or if not 3 times, and we'll be interviewing Mr. Luke Heffley tomorrow at 6:33, I guess 24 hours from now. So, Breanne Davis, this is what she said on Facebook when she was asked if she supports Obamacare Arkansas Works. She goes, Obamacare and Arkansas Works are not the same thing. There are people working hard to confuse us and tell us they are the same. That is not factual. I opposed and continue to oppose Obamacare. What Obama and Governor Beebe wanted was straight Medicaid expansion. In fact, Beebe publicly demanded it. Our Republican legislature said no, so we did not expand Medicaid like most Democrat states did. Folks, that is not an accurate description of what happened. President Obama was ecstatic that we implemented Obamacare. He didn't care how we did it. This was about dependency. Brianne should know this. As a Republican, you should know that the reason Obama agreed, because he had to agree to the private option, is because this was about dependency. It was about getting a new population dependent on some sort of government program, government welfare program, in this case for able-to-work adults who don't work. She goes on, our Republican legislator said no, so we did not expand Medicaid. Yes, you did expand Medicaid. She goes on, the legislature created an alternative that would not increase who was on the Medicaid rolls. What? But instead used money available to buy them private insurance, which allows our nurses, doctors, and hospitals to be paid for the work of taking care of this population. Stop. No, let me just tell you something. And I bet you Brianne Davis doesn't even know this. There's something called DISH payments. These were payments, federal payments that go to hospitals for so-called uncompensated care. They were supposed to expire, and they never have. It was the main reason Arkansas politicians said, we got to have this because they're going to get rid of the DISH payment. No, they haven't ever done it. Still going on, from my knowledge, or they went on for if they have gone away, they went on for a very, very, very long time, way longer than they ever were supposed to. She said, people say it is not conservative and that we should end it immediately. Going back to people not paying for ER or doctor's visits, which means our medical staff across the state would continue to not get paid for services. How is it more conservative to have a doctor work on a person and not get paid for it? Well, I mean, Brianne, every business has uncollectibles. Would you propose a government program for every business to not be able to collect? Would you propose a government program if, for say, this radio program is able to not collect on, let's say, an advertising bill that's owed? Would you want to give me a government program for that? I wouldn't support it, but would you? Oh, well, it's hospital, so it's different. What about the bogus hospital math of what uncompensated care really is? You realize they inflate their numbers, right? You've done the research, right? You understand that they're actually giving you information to use as propaganda against the people of Arkansas to give you a reason to continue putting a taxpayer-funded guaranteed revenue stream towards insurance companies, right? Uncompensated care, give me a break. By the way, people on Arkansas Works are still going to the emergency room, even though we're paying $500 a month for an insurance policy, whether they go to the doctor or not. For basic stuff, they're still going to the emergency room. Let's see, it goes on. Let's see here. I will support. Listen, this is Brianne Davis. Quote, I will support Arkansas Works as long as we continue to aggressively reduce our Medicaid population in Washington, D.C. And she goes, and in Washington, D.C., the Democrats held our military hostage. So then she takes the populist line. Okay, all that being said, let's go back to her initial statement. Obamacare and Arkansas Works are not the same thing. If that's true, why did Hillary Clinton come to Little Rock, Arkansas on September 21st of 2015 and say this?
I got to tell you, it gives me great joy to go around bragging about Bill Clinton and Barack Obama every chance I get. And look, I'm going to brag on Arkansas again. I'm going to brag on Arkansas again because I was just in Louisiana. I love Louisiana.
That was
it's
Bobby
a wonderful
Jindal.
state. But when you compare the way the politicians in Louisiana responded to increasing access to Medicaid, and if you compare it to what the politicians here in Arkansas did, it is no comparison at all. This state, in a bipartisan agreement, decided to expand access to Medicaid. And
it's the same thing.
250,000 people
330.
in Arkansas
330,000
got access to coverage. Mm-hmm. That's one of the reasons why the uninsured rate here in Arkansas was cut nearly in half.
So here we go. That's Hillary Clinton. You want to explain that? You Republicans want to explain that to me? Or some of you are probably in the audience at that rally in Little Rock just clapping. Yeah, we're so good. But, I mean, can you hear the obviously this is can we just take a moment and say I'm really glad that she lost. But can you hear the admiration? It's like she's in the back of her mind, you know, maybe the subtext here is like, I'm home because they found a way. You know, the same gears that almost put me in the White House or that I thought were going to put me in the White House, that gave me my start here politically, they found a way to do this. They found a way to sell this to the people. The Republicans, they run on not expanding, not participating, and then they go ahead and they participate anyway. I mean, it's got Clinton slime all over it. The whole process to this day has Bill and Hillary Clinton slime all over it, just in terms of this is something, of course, they would love and admire, the way they got this done. The people of Arkansas being told one thing and then the politicians coming back and saying, well, I know we campaigned on this, but I'm a lot smarter now, and things aren't the way I thought they were when I was running for office. Give me a break. This is not the government people are voting for. And so we've got a special election. We have a divide in this state. We have the Republicans who are in control of the party, the Republicans who are in control of the heads of the Senate, the governor, the heads of the House, and they want the status quo maintained. They like those lobbyists down there. And those lobbyists are the ones that are throwing this fundraiser, or it actually already happened back on December 1st, I think. They're the ones that threw the fundraiser for Breanne Davis, and they represent every special interest you could imagine down there. Tobacco, alcohol, all these lobbyists that are listed on the invitation. They're listed on the invitation. And then she comes out and she's for Arkansas Works, and that is why, which is being for Obamacare, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is why all these lobbyists are supporting her, especially the ones from the healthcare industry. I mean, Asa can try to adopt my position all he wants. He can try to get his picked candidates to adopt my position all he wants. But I actually am against Obamacare in Arkansas. He is not. He campaigned on being against it, but then he failed to lead us out of it. He failed to admit that we had implemented it. And to this day, I don't know, man. I'd like to say it drives them nuts. I'd like to say at some point maybe they, I don't know. When you habitually mislead people over and over and over again, I don't think I could do that. Wake up every day like, okay, got to keep the theater going one more day. Got to do something. To keep this thing going. What am I going to have to say today? What group of words am I going to put together that I call the truth to get me through the next 5 months of a primary with Jan Morgan? See, all of this is connected. The governor needs yes men. He's not. The nephews aren't going to be around forever. He's losing one of them because Jeremy Hutchinson, one of the senators that has protected the governor from having to, be exposed as not being really a pro-Second Amendment governor, he's not running for re-election. So he's losing one nephew as the Senate. You've got Senator Jim Hendren, who's the other nephew, who wants to move from being the majority leader to the president pro temp of the Senate. By the way, is that going to look good? Do you think that's going to look good for Republicans to have a Republican governor and his nephew as the head of the Arkansas Senate? Does that bother any Republican out there just because of the appearance of maybe, it's just the appearance that instead of a government controlled by the people, we have a government that's more controlled by a family, What type of government used to be controlled? What's the type of government? Oh, a monarchy. Yeah, right. That's a thing that it's a monarchy. We don't. That's not really what we're supposed to be about here. Last I checked. Yeah, that's didn't we settle that whole monarchy thing back in the 18th century? And we also settled it again, by the way, when Donald Trump was elected. We can, when you kind of go like, you go Bush, Clinton, again, really? We're going to have another... Anyway, we're not a monarchy. So, speaking of Jan Morgan, by the way, this is pretty interesting. The UCA College Republicans have put out a poll, and they have... well, first of all, let's look at this. This is what the UCA Republicans are about. Very similar to this graphic we showed you earlier in the show. Lower taxes, smaller government, freedom of speech, Second Amendment rights, pro-life, strong national defense, encouraging business, individual liberties, the UCA College Republicans. Now, check this out. They put out a poll. Who's your current choice in the Arkansas Republican gubernatorial primary? Is it Asa Hutchinson or Jan Morgan? Right now, so far, 1,557 people have voted. And 61% prefer Jan Morgan in the primary versus 39% for Governor Asa Hutchinson. What's really funny here is we start reading some of these comments here. Scroll down here. We have a Fort Smith citizen saying, looking forward to seeing Jan Morgan in Sebastian County. And you have Citizens for Trump. There's only one clear choice for Governor of Arkansas, Jan Morgan. Chris on Twitter, any Arkansas swamp drainer, surely not established insider such as Hutchinson. Besides, best enforcement of term limits is don't vote for them twice. Stephanie on Twitter, Jan Morgan has my vote. No more funding big government as Asa does. He doesn't care about Arkansas. He doesn't care about families. He only cares about his big donors. Jan Morgan for Arkansas governor. Another post on Twitter. Greg says, Asa Hutchinson, the way he's been spending taxpayers' money, I'm starting to wonder if he lied about being a Republican. Oh, you don't have that one? Anyway, maybe some of it's been updated. Darren, I've talked to many people into voting for Jan. It really hasn't been difficult at all. Most are fed up with Asa. Have you seen that one? Yeah, click on 2 more replies, Joe. So some lady named Emily says, why? Why have you talked people into voting for Jan? Listen to what Darren says on Twitter. Why? Because he's a tax and spend, big government, underhanded agenda rhino. You want evidence? Go to arkleg.com and look at all that he and his nephews pushed through the 2017 session. That's what I did. Darren, man, I hope you're a listener of the program. Let's see. Drew, Asa Hutchinson is Republican in name only. Look at his policies. That an old, let's see here. He's almost a carbon copy of Joe Biden and is as corrupt, too. Anti-conservative. What does he say here? That an old white Obama light. What does that mean? He's Obama light and white. Okay. Okay. Jan Morgan all the way, tired of Hutchinson and his liberalism. He's a fake conservative. That's what Landon says on Twitter. Again, the primary is May 22nd. The Republican primary is May 22nd. So, that's the response to a UCA. You've got 4 days left to go vote in this poll, by the way, if you want. 4 days left. Matter of fact, I'll post the poll to our Facebook feed. And you guys can check that out. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we may have time for a carefully crafted language segment. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to Conduit News Radio. I'm Paul Harrell. Back in a minute.
This is Mother Government. My people. The promised revenue gathering to fund my motherly goals, such as the Arkansas Works, Obamacare, private option has commenced. I have asked my representatives and senators to execute my will concerning new revenues, from the tires you use to drive on my roads, the candy and sodas you consume and purchase in my stores, and the digital products you download on my internet. Your sacrifices and tributes, which are owed, display a measure of obedience, but there are still collectible sacrifices I require from the people to increase the work and size of our great government of Arkansas. There are two matters left unresolved. 1. I require a general tribute for all purchases made on my internet. Not just digital products, but all products. My dear children, there are those who would thwart my motherly goals of progress. If you see them, please combat their misguided notions of freedom by using phrases like mom and pop, and tax cheat. 2. I still require more revenue sacrifices concerning your consumption of my gasoline. I require your undying loyalty on the subject. Subjects, in conclusion. More revenue is good. Static revenue is bad. This message was brought to you by your stewards, aristocrats serving Arkansas. Thank you, my children, in advance for your required and expected obedience that keeps society safe and prosperous. And always remember, from cradle to grave.
PHP Parody. The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Did you see this? You see this story back on the 21st? You have Michael Wickline writing that Arkansas governor's proposal on reserve cash wins plaudits, but some in state raising questions. It talks about how he has his proposal to set aside nearly $48 million of what he calls surplus. It does, though, mention in the third paragraph for fiscal 2019, Hutchinson proposed a $5.62 billion budget that would be a $172.8 million increase. That brings his total to over $600 million in increases since he was in office. Since we voted him in, he's grown government by over $600 million. Which is just that there's no way you can say, well, that's just, that's stagnant growth, adjusted population, plus inflation. No, not at all. But this is about what's called a long-term reserve fund, and I'm going to let you know a little bit about that. But Michael Wickline writes, the state previously set aside money for nearly a decade. The state has had a so-called rainy day fund. It also has a long-term reserve fund created in 2016 by the legislature, which the next year authorized the shifting of about $100 million of tobacco settlement proceeds into that fund. So that's an interesting statement. So, interesting thing about this, and I feel the need to tell... do we have something here?
This is a carefully crafted language alert.
Okay.
Please be advised.
Okay, so this is a carefully crafted language alert, but this is more along the lines of it's not so much the media's fault here. Michael Wickline's fault is it is that the legislature loves to pass bills in titles and call things certain names that are carefully crafted language or completely deceptive. The Long-Term Reserve Fund. That sounds like a great fund, doesn't it? Doesn't that sound like something that's just... sounds conservative, right? The Long-Term Reserve Fund. We get articles written about the Long-Term Reserve Fund and what ASA wants to do. Let's do a flashback here. On May 2nd of 2017, headline, conduitforaction.org, ASA's shell game and the effort to increase his slush fund. ASA's shell game. Governor Asa Hutchinson wants to take $105 million out of a state trust fund for health issues and put it in the long-term reserve fund. The governor claimed he needed the money transferred so Arkansas would have enough in a reserve fund to help Arkansas's bond rating. But Conduit for Action saw that the money was going into the governor's discretionary spending account, a slush fund. The governor can use the money in the fund as long as it gets approval of one legislative committee, the Legislative Council. They rubber stamp everything. That is a much easier route to spending discretionary money than having to get an appropriation bill approved by 75% of the House and the Senate, which we're about to have to do coming up. Then, Monday, May 1st, the governor claimed he needed the money to be transferred to the Long-Term Reserve Fund to use for economic development. Which is it, a fund to build up a reserve or a spending account? Conduit for Action pointed out that the Long-Term Reserve Fund is the governor's discretionary fund for his priorities. They just called it the Long-Term Reserve Fund. The fund used to be called the Rainy Day Fund until 2016, when the name was changed to Long-Term Reserve Fund. There was no change in how the fund could be used. The governor's spokesman, J.R. Davis, took exception with Conduit for Action's analysis. He tweeted, "Long-Term Reserve Fund is completely separate from Rainy Day Fund, an important fact that should not be neglected." His assertion is both a deception and has an element of truth in it. Hang on, this is going to be confusing, but once you see the shell game the governor's office is playing, you see how prevalent the culture of deception is in Little Rock. Mr. J.R. Davis's statement is a deception in that it gives the reader the impression the Long-Term Reserve Fund is not the governor's slush fund, but it is. In a sneaky way, the deception also has an element of truth in it. Earlier this year, a new fund was created reusing the name Rainy Day Fund, but having nothing to do with the purpose of the old Rainy Day Fund, now renamed the Long-Term Reserve Fund. Told you this would get confusing, but here is a simple outline of ASA's shell game. Number one, the Rainy Day Fund, the old one. The fund was established to give then-Governor Beebe some discretionary funds for emergency and his priorities. In the first 18 months of the Hutchinson administration, Governor Hutchinson spent more money from this fund than former Governor Mike Beebe did in 6 years. Governor Hutchinson admitted the fund is for emergencies and special needs he determines and for his priorities that aren't included in the state's general revenue budget. Again, why? Because you have to get 75% approval to spend it. As the public became aware of his spending, the governor was increasingly criticized for using the Rainy Day Fund, the old one, as a slush fund. So number two, what did they do? They renamed as the Long-Term Reserve Fund. In 2016, without explanation, the Rainy Day Fund was renamed as the Long-Term Reserve Fund. So there was a name change was tucked into Section 15 of a bill concerning highway funding. Good grief. A place where few would notice it, with no reason for the fund being renamed and no changes in the fund's use. We assume it was done as a way to hide the fund for a while. The media would still be looking for discretionary spending from the Rainy Day Fund. So what did they do? They created a new fund and called it the Rainy Day Fund. Just like the old one was called Rainy Day Fund, but it was changed to Long-Term Reserve Fund, but no changes in how you can spend the money. Earlier in the year, the governor and legislature reused the name Rainy Day Fund for something completely different and to hide something else. In previous regular sessions, there would be a general improvement distribution bill. GIF, of course, extremely controversial, with one former legislator now pleading guilty to taking kickbacks. We got now John Woods, who's been indicted, Senator John Woods being indicted as well. The scheme of changing all this around accomplished two things. First, if you were looking for the GIF distribution bill, it was going to be hard to find because of the new name, Rainy Day Fund. Second, if you were looking for the governor's discretionary spending using the old name, Rainy Day Fund, you would instead find this new Rainy Day Fund, which is GIF distribution. The renaming of the old Rainy Day Fund to the Long-Term Reserve Fund helped hide the governor's discretionary spending fund, or slush fund, from scrutiny. The creation of a new fund reusing the name Rainy Day Fund helped hide the controversial GIF distribution bill. This is the kind of shell game our governor, Asa Hutchinson, plays. Maybe this is how they did it during the many years how he did it during his many years as a federal employee, congressman, but this is not how Arkansans expect their public servants to do business. Folks, that is the conclusion of this hour and the conclusion of our carefully crafted language segment of the day. You can see, and now what happens? The media reports on this long-term reserve fund. Most people have no idea the background and the history of what they did to get to this point. But now you know. Go tell your friends. Go check this article out. It's from a while back, conduitforaction.org.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk, 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
Say my driver's not gone anywhere for 2 weeks. He literally put, I was off from this date to this date. I wasn't driving. But then, I didn't drive. I wasn't driving this vehicle for this amount of time, and then now I'm back on. And he starts logging that. So if they have to, when they start working that day and say they're going to haul hay that day, they have to show that they only did 14 hours of service or less if they're on that road. Because if they've worked more than 14 hours and a DOT officer pulls them over, they're illegal. They're going to get fined. They're out of hours of service, and so that officer is going to take them to somewhere where it's safe. They don't keep them on the side of the road, but they may they may escort them to a weigh station, they may escort them to a truck stop or a gas station, but then that vehicle must stop and stay there for 10 consecutive hours. That vehicle that is connected to that logging device cannot move for 10 consecutive hours. That doesn't matter if it's loaded with hay, it's loaded with pigs, cattle, horses. It can't move. Now, if you can unload that livestock and allow it to rest, you can do that. So, of course, you could take it out and tie it to the side of the trailer, but you can't do that with, a load of bulls or a load of hogs.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
This is a mess. We're talking with Melissa Kohler, operations manager at Kohler Moving and Storage. Okay, so Melissa, last night you've done a great job, by the way, of explaining where the rub is and what's coming down the pike. But obviously, the Arkansas law enforcement, they're telling people that they're about to start ticketing folks who don't have this. So there was a public information meeting last night with the Arkansas Department of Transportation. Am I correct about that? What was the attitude for the people in the room?
The attitude is a lot of anger and a lot of confusion. And to be quite honest, though I'm appreciative of the highway police coming out and speaking to us, they didn't make the law any more clear for most of those people. Everybody came away just as confused as they were. There's, when people ask them questions about, well, what's going to happen when I cross into Oklahoma or Missouri or Texas, they kept getting the answer, well, I can't say. That we can only say what we're going to do here in Arkansas. Well, why not? This is federal law, and you're telling us you're going to enforce federal law on us. This isn't an Arkansas highway police. This isn't an Arkansas state law. They are the representatives of the Department of Transportation in Arkansas, and they're going to enforce the federal law. So where, he's saying, well, we might not go to that extreme or choose to do that. I can't tell you what Oklahoma's going to do. Well, if you're going to enforce federal law, shouldn't they all have a standard of what they're going to do? They don't. They're confused. They don't know what they're going to do. But I tell you what, we all know they're going to enforce it because it makes money, right? When you pull somebody over and you fine them for a logging violation, it makes a lot of money for the state. They pull a lot of money out of a trucker's pocket when there's a logging violation.
Or now a farmer is what this is about.
Now it's going to be a farmer, or now it's going to be, let's get really real here. Now it's going to be your 4-H member or your junior rodeo kid whose parent was trying to drive them to a jackpot in another state, okay? Not so much inside Arkansas, right? Because you can get a lot of places within that 175-mile range. But a lot of these kids that are seriously working towards scholarship in livestock or rodeo, they travel more miles, and they're going to have to use these devices. Now, the next thing to be clear about, Paul, is who can get a CDL? Well, a lot of it, when I was 16 years old, I was an old Fort Dave Sandy. I started pulling my own rig. I had a 1-ton dually and a 4-horse trailer hitch trailer, and I was heavy. When I loaded that sucker down, I was heavy. But I pulled that at 16 years old. When I was 18 years old, I started traveling around the country, right? Started traveling around about the 4-state area, barrel racing and doing rodeo queen contests. You can't get a CDL until you're 21 years old.
Wow.
Well, right. So when an 18-year-old kid that's been roping goes and buys his professional rodeo cowboy rookie card, and he wants to go travel his circuit, trying to become a professional roper and get enough points on his card to maybe make the circuit finals, or if he.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, it's hour number 2, and remind everybody, tonight I'm going to be with the great Josh Waters. We're going to be presenting at the Mississippi County Republican Committee. Conduit for Action will be there. That's tonight, 7 o'clock, the Bush-Thornton Building, 1594 South Division Street in Blytheville. So everybody out there listening in the Northeast Arkansas area, feel free. If you want to meet some fine Republicans, you can go to the Mississippi County Republican Committee. I'll be there with bells on it. I'm excited about it. So, okay. Let's see here. What are we doing here? Let's welcome back to the program. Okay, I think that's my fault, actually. Yeah. That sound means it's time for our Conservative Future segment, where we like to interview younger conservatives who are out there in the political scene. And welcome back to the program. We have Mr. Michael Banks, who is a very informed citizen, great guy. Michael, welcome back to the show, sir.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
Yeah, absolutely. So, just first of all, it's been, I don't know, when was the last time you were on the show? It was last year sometime, right?
Yes, sir. June or July.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so it's been a couple months since we talked to you, or 6 months since we talked to you. So tell us, Michael, what's been going on with you? What are you up to these days?
Well, I'm my wife and I are raising a 14-month-old little baby girl, and I don't know anything about girls really. I've got 3 brothers. Grew up on a baseball field and in the oil and gas business, so I know dudes really well. And the good Lord blessed me with a little girl, so I struggle trying to put her hair in a ponytail.
Yeah. Okay, so I have a 6-month-old, first time dad myself, and so what can I expect? I was talking to a guy the other day who also has a little girl, and he was telling me, I was just like, okay, so what's going on, in the next couple stages, when she starts to crawl or she starts to walk. And he was just like, well, there are pros and cons. There are pros and cons to every stage, and you miss the last stage and you enjoy the next stage. But then, it's like, okay, great. She can take stuff and she can put it in the trash can. That's really good. That's an accomplishment. But she also pulls old stuff out of the trash can, and so you have pros and cons of each stage. So, I mean, Michael, feel free to drop some wisdom on me. What can I expect in the next 6 months?
Well, expect the unexpected, because I don't have an answer for that. I was kind of, I guess, surprised at how quick she got an attitude. I thought that was supposed to happen at 13, and she's 13 months old, and she got the attitude pretty early, which is a good thing. But that I don't really have an answer for your question.
Yeah, well,
I'm learning as I go as well.
Okay, all right. Well, maybe we should go to therapy or something. I don't know. I think I'm definitely learning as I go as well. I think that's part of it. All right, so let me see. So Michael Banks, what are you thinking right now about what's going on nationally with Donald Trump? What did you think about that government shutdown?
It didn't work out very well. The Schumer shutdown, as they've coined it, was not good for them. I find it fascinating that illegal aliens are more important than the people who are currently serving in our government and veterans and everybody else involved. Which I don't think is going to work out well for them in future elections.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't either. I think that's why they ended it. And and if I was listening to a montage yesterday of the media reporting how they kept using the word Democrats caved, Democrats caved, Democrats caved, and it's really astonishing. I don't know if I've ever heard the media talk so poorly about the Democrats or announce their failures as much as they have recently. And, of course, now, you've got the left and the people who want amnesty for everybody. They're really in full force. They're trying to, motivate Chuck Schumer and everything else. I don't know, though. I don't think this is going to, work out. I think it was a big step to, and maybe even a blow for conservatives to say, okay, you know what, we are going to grant some sort of amnesty or legal status here for DACA. Okay, all right, we can debate that. But the fact that Donald Trump was giving that and saying, but I want a wall, and you have Tom Cotton, who is, facing down New York Democrat Chuck Schumer on the national stage, very refreshing to see and talking about, but we're also going to end chain migration. We're not going to legalize these folks or give them legal status and then allow them to bring 6 million of their family members into this country, who then we have even another problem. Okay, well, what are we going to do with them? And so I just have been encouraged by Tom Cotton especially, just seeing how he is, holding the line, so to speak.
Me too, Paul. Me too. It's I was just having donuts and coffee with a good friend of mine, and we were talking about Tom Cotton and how proud we are that he represents us. So yeah. I feel like adequately represented right now about on that issue by him. All right, see what else? What other issues that we have going on? All right, let's just talk about Arkansas for a second. I talked to you right before you came on. I understand you were in a highway meeting of some kind yesterday, getting briefed on infrastructure or something. What can you tell us about that? So it was an Associated General Contractors meeting, and Scott Bennett, the director of Arkansas Highway Transportation Department, gave us a speech, and it was a really fair and balanced speech. Just he laid out the facts, and don't quote me on these numbers. I didn't write this stuff down, but I think historically the infrastructure highways and roads got about 14% of the general revenue in our state. And, that money's going right back to small business owners. Somebody's pushing the dirt. Somebody's laying the asphalt. It's private companies that are benefiting from that revenue going back into our roads and streets. Well, general revenue, as has increased, significantly over the last few years, and but roads and street funding is now just 6% of the general revenue goes into our roads and streets, and they don't really have a plan. Nobody has a plan to fund the future of our infrastructure. We've got sales tax on gasoline. Well, nobody has a plan for the future when everything's, I believe, will be compressed natural gas, or even if they figure out some technologies and batteries and electrical. There's no financing in the future for our roads and streets, and it fascinates me that nobody running for public office and nobody in public office has a plan for that. It's like, 90% of our revenue in the state goes to education, our correction system, and health care.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then, so the other 10% has to go to everything else. So we've got some issues going on, and nobody has a plan. That's kind of concerning to me as a young conservative.
Yeah. I mean, you would think. We all agree. I think most of us agree. I mean, I know some people maybe would say, I'd like to privatize the roads, or there are some people with it. But I think most people are like, this is a proper function of government. To take some of our money and to build roads, because it does help the economy when you can get goods to market and people have the freedom to travel and commerce and voluntary cooperation. I mean, cars are a part of our society, integral part of our society. My whole position is, we're giving the government, we're already giving the government money to do these things. And look, I know
they have plenty of money.
Yeah.
Paul, you're exactly right.
Yeah, they have plenty of money. They're already taking so much of our money, and it's just about the priorities of where they're going to spend it. And they got record revenues, and they increase spending from year to year. And on the general revenue, the governor, I know the highway folks seems like they wanted to dip into more general revenue. The governor says no, and I mean, I say that's because we've committed resources to bigger government programs and growing government, and that's why we can't give any more money, to the highways. Was there any talk about the stance of because they wanted they had a proposal to get some general revenue. The governor said no, we're not going to do that. Was there any talk about that in the meeting?
Yeah, there were talks about different ideas in the past. I think 2013 they had a plan. 2016 they had a plan. One got out of committee, failed on the House floor. Another one didn't get out of committee, never made it to the floor. So, there's only two options. You either have to increase taxes to fund roads, or you have to dip into the general revenue, and nobody can agree on how they're going to get there.
Yeah.
And so, Scott Bennett just kind of laid out the facts. He didn't pick sides. Just, we've got to do something.
Yeah.
Our bridges are going to continue to crumble over time, and nobody has a plan.
Just laying out the impasse. I mean, that's essentially where we're at. We're kind of at a stalemate where, and the problem is, the governor supports an increase in the gasoline tax at the wholesale level, which eventually filters down to the pump. He wants the voters to decide, which to me, if you refer something to the voters and it's a potential tax increase, well, I say you're for it, because if you could use your power to ensure that we don't get a tax increase. But the bill that failed in 2017, they were trying to refer a ballot initiative. So we would have been voting to raise our taxes on gas. But the bill's title and the title that would have appeared on the ballot mentioned nothing about that we would be paying more money. It was just to finance bonds, but they were going to use it was in the context of the bill, but it wasn't going to be in the title. It was going to trick people into voting for a tax increase, into voting to paying more at the pump. And, for the life of me, Michael, I mean, if the people were to decide to do it, okay, whatever, that's the way our society works. But can we please have honest politicians that just, honestly and transparency present on the ballot what it is you're voting for?
Yeah, that's a challenge. I don't have an answer for that. I look back and I think about that ethics deal that had nothing to do with ethics.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mean the one that increased their term limits? By claiming to establish term limits. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like nobody read the last few sentences in that issue. But, you're exactly right. It's everything's very misleading in government. So
Yeah.
That's why, I am passionate as a young conservative about the future, and it doesn't make sense to me to try to increase a gasoline sales tax. We need to focus on financing that infrastructure in the future, and nobody has a plan. I mean, what are we going to do when ride sharing takes off and, Uber starts like having electric school buses and people were commuting to Little Rock that way in, 15 years or, we talked about this, some buddies and I last night, what are we going to do when Walmart starts delivering groceries to your home, via drone? I mean, that's not that far out. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's a lot of Walmarts across the country. That's exactly right.
Yeah, and they just 60 Sam's Clubs all across the country were shut down to turn them into like a local online e-commerce distribution hub, and everything is going in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, that's true. It's going to be we've got to have people willing to come up with some bold ideas, and I mean, Arkansas's budget is a complete mess, and we've got to have people, come up with bold ideas that can deliver what the people expect, what we're giving them money to do, but they don't need to continue. They don't need to perpetuate a system that continue. Well, it's been 5 years. We need a little bit more money. No. I mean, if our population continues to grow, we have more people, participating. You don't need to keep raising the taxes to do the stuff that we're already giving you the money to do. That suggests that there's mismanagement going on. Oh, and one more thing, Michael. We got to go here in a minute, but on the ballot stuff, isn't it weird? Isn't it like it's like a soft tyranny? If you or I got together and got a petition to put something on the ballot, the Attorney General can essentially say that your title is misleading. And they can, and she, in this case, Leslie Rutledge, would make us change the title if she thought it was misleading and not honest. But if the General Assembly votes on a ballot initiative, that title cannot be challenged. It cannot be challenged at all. There is no mechanism to say, hey, this is a deceptive title, and we need it to be changed to where the people have, a more honest representation. I just find that to be, it's a tragedy, really, and Arkansans have been deceived by it several times recently.
Yeah, that's something. That truly is something. Most of the people that I surround myself with are pretty leery about anything the General Assembly puts on there. So
yeah,
but the average public,
yeah,
if you're not involved, you don't know.
Well, Michael Banks, I appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to have you on. I appreciate the conversation, and we'll do it again soon, okay?
All right. Hey, thanks, Paul. All
righty, be safe. That's Michael Banks, everybody. That concludes our Conservative Future segment that we like to do. Hey, if you know a young conservative, let me know. Text us, call us, 870-275-9799. I'd love to talk to them. 870-275-9799.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
In a world full of constituents with social media accounts, bloggers just looking to increase their page views, and a talk radio host who generally is just the worst, how are Little Rock's elite supposed to conduct business with such a lack of privacy? Introducing the 1835 Club, older and more refined than other clubs that claim discretion. The 1835 Club is for seasoned political veterans that want to conduct the highest form of aristocratic business with the public's money. Are you a schemer? Do you someday want a guaranteed flow of taxpayer money to support your business? Is it your dream to see the .gov domain at the end of your business website? Don't listen to the imitators. The 1835 Club is the place where corrupt politicians and businessmen hatch their next crony schemes. At the 1835 Club, we make lobbying safe and legal. Ethics. Why, of course. All business is done in an ethical manner. Just look for the sign above the door that reads, loophole. Are you tired of the Capitol Police restricting your access to the roof after a perfectly good night of drinking? The 1835 Club has libations and a perfectly good roof. Other crony clubs that promise discretion try to lure you in by advertising bars made out of aeroplanes. Well, at the 1835 Club, instead of an airplane fuselage, we've got a space shuttle. No, not a bar. We've got an actual space shuttle that makes a daily run to the moon so members of the 1835 Club can have some real privacy away from the bloggers and taxpayers. Are you an Arkansas aristocrat? Do you want to be? It's the 1835 Club, and we work tirelessly to make sure the good old boy system remains alive and well. Join today.
Disclaimer. The 1835 Club reserves the right to deny membership to anyone who has principles. Any talk of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution must be done in jest or, at the very least, with a condescending tone. And finally, the 1835 Club will be given a 25% commission of any agreements made between politicians and the business community.
PHP Parody.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
This bumper makes me happy. Good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for being with us today. On our Facebook live feed we got going on right now over at facebook.com/Conduit News, Dan writes, honest politicians sounds like an oxymoron. We need honest representatives with a servant's heart. Dan is exactly right. That is, I believe, what we're voting for. Many of us are voting for. The problem is, sometimes we're not voting for that because everybody campaigns as an honest person. Do you know of a politician that campaigns as a dishonest person? I mean, do you know of anybody that says, vote for me? I'm going to be dishonest and carve out a financial niche for myself and pass legislation that, benefits me first. And if it benefits you, and, whatever, you'll get some benefits. When I need to run for re-election, I'm going to pass stuff that I can take back to you that sounds really good, that I can convince you sounds really good. Nobody runs as a dishonest. Nobody says, you can't trust me, vote for me. And that's the problem. How do we determine? So, you have to just you have to look at what they've done when they have a record. And see, that's the problem. The dishonesty comes first when they say one thing and do another, and then the dishonesty happens again when you call them out on their initial dishonesty and they argue with you and they say, no, that's not right. You're misrepresenting what I voted for. Or why can't we just agree? Or why can't we disagree and be agreeable? Well, because you're growing government, and I mean, I'm just telling the truth about that, and you're the one that's getting so upset about it. Although I get pretty upset too, if I'm honest. Back in a minute.
Good enough to make it to the NFR. If he's carrying a rig that his gross value weight passes 26,000 pounds, he'd have to have a CDL to drive that rig. But he can't get that license until he's 21 years old.
So,
for my trucking industry, I can't even insure a trucker until he's 25 years old, which is one of the reasons the trucking industry is having a very difficult time.
Yeah.
Because we have, by the time a guy's 25, has he done anything to get himself in trouble where I can't hire him now?
Right. Yeah.
It's a lot of overbearing, overreaching law that is going to really hurt so many industries.
So, obviously this is federal law, federal overreach. Somebody, actually Bob Bailey, writing on our Facebook page that Obama strikes again. This needs to be repealed. I guess the question is: did anybody at the meeting ask the state police why they're all of a sudden enforcing this when they weren't before? I mean, this is, like you said, it was back in 2012. Why all of a sudden? I mean, is this a directive from the governor saying we're going to enforce this now?
No, it's not. So the bill was introduced in 2012, and the mandate went into effect for the trucking industry on December 18th of 2017.
Okay.
Just last
to
month.
Clear this up.
And then we had several in the livestock industry, including the Arkansas or the American Horse Council, the American Cattlemen's Association. They all have been lobbying to get this to go away, and they were granted a 90-day exemption, which is why the story you described where they were arriving at a livestock event and told him that this is going to start being enforced. Well, that's why they're saying it's going to start being. For me, for those in trucking, in any type of trucking, this rule came into effect for us December 18th. We've been preparing for this for a while. For the livestock industry, they had 90 days from December 18th to get prepared for this. To find out how much does their rig weigh when it's loaded. You need to know how much your rig weighs when you have one animal on, no animals on, and a full load on. When are you going to have where are you going to weigh? Because you have to understand, they can weigh your vehicle right where they're at. They have a device where they can do that. If you're over in Crawford County and you're traveling Highway 64, well, there is a scale actually built into the road on Highway 64 in Crawford County that every single person goes over that utilizes 64 when you're coming from Van Buren into Alma. Okay, so on the eastbound side, and it actually, if you're
bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, so 870-275-9799. If you want to call us or text us, feel free to do that. That's 870-275-9799 or Facebook.com/Conduit News. It's Facebook.com/Conduit News. Let's see here. I've got a text message here. Okay, talking about filing fees. Republican committee doubling filing fees to run for office. Well, the Republicans, they like and the Democrats, they like those filing fees. They like people to run for office. And I do think there's a recent change in that, but it escapes me right now. A lot of stuff happens that I definitely know there was some. I don't know if that had something to do when they moved the primary. Of course, they moved the primary back, though. You recognize, remember, they moved the primary last year so that we would all vote where the other southern states vote because of the presidential election. So, but now the primary is back in May 22nd. So we got that. All right, one second here. You know what this means. It's time. It is the weekly Conduit Fraction game show. You can find the Conduit Fraction quiz over at conduitfraction.org, because knowledge, my friends, knowledge is power. So we're going to do a little bit of educating here. You see, the Arkansas General Assembly meets every other year for a fiscal session to pass appropriation bills. These appropriation bills grant the authority for specific agencies and departments to spend taxpayer money on specific line items. I know the suspense is absolutely killing you, right? The fiscal session is the culmination and full legislative process for the budgeting and spending of taxpayer money. The fiscal session is only for appropriation bills, unlike the regular legislative session, which takes place every other year in odd-numbered years. Arkansas Constitution Article 5, Section 5 lays out the details of the fiscal session and what can take place during the session. The quiz will highlight the budget requests from the Big Six, is what they're called. That will be debated and passed during the fiscal session. The Big Six are the 6 largest state agencies, and they account for the largest amount of appropriations across the state government. The Big Six include Department of Human Services, Department of Community Correction, Department of Correction, Department of Education, Department of Health and Institutions of Higher Education. The Big Six recently had budget hearings allowing legislators to ask questions about specific line item spending. The executive recommendation is the governor's recommendation. Of course, we covered that extensively. You had legislators trying to make cuts. You had them pass the governor's recommendation for the Department of Health without a quorum. They passed it without a quorum. There weren't enough senators there. It was just a disgrace of a process that we couldn't actually get the cuts made. But, you know, Ace is a big spender, so what are you going to do? All right, so this is our quiz. We got Joe on the screen. Joe, appreciate it. Thanks for, always being here. And
always willing to take the quiz.
Always willing to take this quiz. So we got a few things here. If you get a correct answer, I might play this. Just letting everybody know. And if you get a wrong answer, I might play that. It really just depends on how these. It really just depends on how these things work out. But anyway, so let's get started here. We've got question number 1 for fiscal year 2019. The executive recommendation for the Department of Community Corrections total appropriation was $126,198,213.
That's too much money.
How much of an increase is this number over the fiscal 2018 budget? Is it A, $109?
I'm just going to go no.
Or a
said no to that one.
Or a 0.001% increase? Is it B? Let's see, $2,506. I'm sorry, $2,506,101, or a 2.2% increase, or is it C, $14,964,906, or a 13.5% increase? Which one do you think it is?
Question: what is the community or Department of Community Corrections? What does that cover?
A Department of Corrections. I don't know.
Well, that's the next thing. The Department of Corrections is the next one.
Oh, okay. Executive recommendation for the department. I don't know, Joe. It's a government agency. These things are
this one
duplicative and ridiculous.
This one doesn't sound as important, so I'm going to go with 2.2% increase.
Oh, you are? Okay. All right.
Doesn't sound as important.
Okay. All right. Question number 2. For fiscal year 2019, the executive recommendation for the Department of Corrections total appropriation is $430,499,151. How much of an increase is this over the fiscal 2018 budget? Wow, these are great. I love this. Is it a $2 million increase or 0.5%? Is it an $11 million increase or 0.29%? Or is it
2.9%?
Yeah, 2.9%. Or is it a $15 million, $15,717,424, or a 3.8% increase to the Department of Corrections?
I'm assuming I'm going to go because the Department of Corrections is pretty important.
Mm-hmm.
Like I assume that they're going to go with the 3.8%, like the full as much as they can give them.
So $15 million. What's interesting here is there have been a lot of legislators saying that they're not giving enough money to the Department of Corrections this year. All right, question number 3 is for fiscal year 2019, the executive recommendation. Now, when you say the executive recommendation, remember, this is what ASA wants, so I'm going to change the question. For fiscal year 2019, ASA's recommendation for the Department of Education Public School Fund.
Oh my gosh, it's almost
$2 billion.
$3 billion.
Yeah, it's $2 billion.
Oh my gosh.
900. Man, when you really start looking at some of these numbers, it's when you start to read them, it's just daunting. All right, $2,997,802,887.
I'm gonna go with the full.
How much of an increase is this? How much of an increase is this from last year? Okay, is it 0.8%, which is is that what is that?
23,517,000.
Yeah, is it
906?
Is it a 1.1 increase? Which would be
32,904,312.
Yeah, or is it a 2% increase of $57 million?
I'm gonna go with the 2% increase because ACEs, because from what I understand, there's still some problems with the education system, or at least the Department of Education.
Oh, really? That may be the understatement of the month.
Exactly. So ACE's biggest problem is if there's a problem, throw money at it. That's the answer.
So
I'm going to go
2% increase. Okay. Question number 4. Fiscal year 2019, ACE's recommendation for the Department of Health is $406,118,501. How much of an increase is this from last year? Is it 1%, which is $3 million, 3.1%, which is about $11 million, or really $12 million? Or is it 7.7% increase, which would be a total of $29,104,705?
I feel like this department is ACE's second favorite one, or only after Department of Health and Human Services.
DHS, yeah.
Yeah, DHS. So I'm going to go with the 7.7%. Give them as much as they want.
All right.
Or as much as you can give them.
Yeah, well, what's funny is this was the key one. In the audio that we were playing when you had Jim Dotson with his motion back when they were doing the appropriation hearings, it was Department of Health they were trying to cut because they said in the committee, the Department of Health bureaucrats said, well, we spent $12 million last year. We're asking for 16 this year in appropriation authority.
Oh, yeah, they're giving 32.
And ASA approved them for like $32 million more or something crazy. So the total increase of the total department, Joe, you're going with $29 million. Okay.
Sure.
Question number 5. For next year's fiscal year, ASA is recommending the Department of Human Services. The budget is
It's almost $10 billion.
Oh, gosh.
It's $9,987,092,513.
I'm not a math guy, but I'm getting a headache having to count my commas to figure out where I start, Is it million or billion?
It's billion.
Okay, so yeah, this one is $9,987,092,513. So that budget for DHS.
And based off what I just said, let's not even read the numbers. They're just he's just going for the biggest one, 18.4%, which is a $1,552,518,472 increase.
18.4% increase.
18.4% increase.
That's what you're going with.
Yes.
That's how much of an increase it is for DHS.
Because that's his favorite one.
Okay.
I feel like.
And maybe not by choice, by the way, because
No, I think it's by choice.
But I'm just saying, when you commit to growing government, and in terms of a welfare program, when it comes to Medicaid expansion, I mean, we are just you're boxed in. It's almost like if you ever hear of some of the national politicians, they talk about discretionary spending, and they talk about non-discretionary spending. And in America, our national budget, if you can call it that, they won't pass a budget, but our national budget, you've basically got 2/3 gone immediately. Just gone, because it's non-discretionary spending. It's obligations. It's what you have to pay when you're talking about Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. And Arkansas is essentially becoming the same way, but even more so, ratio-wise. And so, so we're locked into these increases. We're locked into having to pay more money because we're going from having to pay nothing to having to pay 4%, then 6%, then 10%. It's not good. Question number 6. For this upcoming fiscal year, ACE's recommendation, that's 2- and 4-year colleges and universities and non-formula entities, including UAMS, $632,995,756. How much of an increase is this from last year? Is it 1.2% or $10 million, 3.5% or $29 million, or 5.7% for $47, almost $48 million? Which increase is it? Notice there's nothing down here that says how much of a decrease.
Yeah.
How much of a decrease is this? They're all questions telling you one thing.
I feel like it's
an increase.
I feel like it's 1.2 because ASA gave them an increase and then asked for them not to raise their tuition.
Well,
so they don't have to cover more money with loans and stuff.
I mean, that's if you take him at his word, you would think.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with 1.2.
I mean, if you trust a politician, it's what you would think. Question
1.2.
All right, question number 7. What is the source of these numbers and percent increases?
I'm gonna go with the fact that they're from BLR because the numbers of percent increases were pulled out of the air. I'm gonna go with BLR.
Okay, so this data
individuals.
comes from the Bureau of Legislative Research on their website in the budget manuals for each of these agencies, and the percent increases were calculated using these Bureau of Legislative Research numbers. The source material can be found above in the description box links on this quiz. All right, so have you subscribed to Conduit for Action's email list? You have, Joe, but others taking it may not have, so you can do that. And you put the town that you live in, and go ahead, Joe. What do we got? What'd you do? How'd you do this time?
I got 71.4%.
Ooh, you got 5 out of 7 points.
So I missed the first one.
Okay. So check it out. Here we go. You missed the first one. The first one was the executive recommendation, ACE's recommendation for the Department of Community Corrections. You picked a 2.2% increase. You were wrong. Sorry. 13.5% increase.
Jeez, that's so much more money. That's
Instead of a $2 million increase, it's almost a $15 million
increase. That's a $12 million differential. Oh my Lord.
Hey, big spender.
Hey, big spender. Money.
Hutchinson. All right.
I got
what
numbers
else?
2 and 3 correct.
Yeah, 2 and 3. You're good. What else?
4 correct. I should have just gone with my normal thought process, which is just pick the highest one.
Where's your other? What's the second one you missed?
No, I only missed I haven't got that one yet. I haven't got to that one yet. It's probably lower on the list.
Okay.
But I should have just gone with my normal process of just picking the highest one.
So the stuff that you got right is essentially, the largest number. The largest number was correct every single time.
Yeah, that should have just gone.
The largest amount of increase on this. It was pretty easy. It was like a teacher that just wants you to pass the test. Just wants you to figure it out.
I could have made 100 if I had just gone with what I normally do.
So you got question 6 wrong.
Darn it!
Which was the institutions of higher education. Which is funny. You said, well, maybe it's not as much of an increase because the governor asked them to freeze their tuition. No, you would be trusting that he's actually doing anything to.
I'm kicking myself.
They can
right
still
now.
raise fees, by the way. Yeah, he has this whole thing. Asa comes out and he says, I'm asking them to freeze their tuition. Well, look, they can still increase their fees, which is still a cost that you have to pay in order to go to class, in order to take your classes.
Which is dumb.
It's all carefully crafted language. It's just a big joke. It's an insult to us. It's just like, wow, well, they'll never figure it out, and that's what they count on. They forever, Little Rock has operated because there hasn't been enough mediums like this program, Conduit News Radio, there haven't been enough mediums to get the truth to the people. And that's what we're attempting to do in many ways, is we can be heard on the internet. We make our content available to as many stations as we can, and our terrestrial affiliates across Arkansas. So anyway, Joe, you did pretty good. You just should have gone with the largest amount of increase. It's a huge amount of money that we are spending in increases, in appropriation authority, and it's really hard for the leadership to claim that they believe in fiscal conservatism. There are the leadership. There are Republicans that do, and they're working and they're trying, but there's not enough of them. It appears there's not enough of them that are willing to buck the status quo. There's not enough of them that are willing to go against the governor's wishes, because they worship that R at the end of his name more than I think they really believe in the principles that the R is supposed to stand for. We have to take a break. Back in just a moment.
iTex is your first choice for cost-effective IT services. Protecting your business means protecting your data. Are you tired of unpredictable and expensive spikes in IT spending? Using iTex will prevent downtime and loss of employee productivity, and do it all with an affordable, predictable budget. iTex is the premier managed service provider for small and medium businesses. They help their clients put IT to work to earn your business more money, and you should contact them today for a free consultation. 870-336-9778. That's 870-336-9778 or itexusa.com.
Conservative legislation killed?
Or do you need policies enacted that ensure government growth?
Then you need to get
Nephewed. Hi, I'm nephew number 1 of uncle, nephew, and nephew, attorneys at law. I'm not a lawyer, but I am a senator.
And I'm nephew number 2, and I am a lawyer and also a senator.
Are you the victim of a recent accident in which the voters in your community mistakenly elected a limited government conservative who is now actually implementing the ideas he or she campaigned on?
That's right, nephew number 1. Don't be a victim of democratic elections any longer. At Uncle, Nephew, and Nephew, we are committed to killing limited government legislation and promoting bills that increase the size of government by using any tool at our disposal.
Because sometimes the truth of the matter is, principles get in the way of pragmatism.
Just listen to some of our great testimonials.
Ever since I've been using the nephews, all my special interests have been served. As long as you make sure your contract says lobbying services are prohibited, then the legal services of uncle, nephew, and nephew are legal. Trust me, put the nephews on them.
It came out of nowhere. I was blindsided last election cycle when my well-funded and paid-for politician lost to some grassroots limited government voters. But then I hired the nephews, and they killed all the conservative policies the voters wanted. I got nephewed.
I got nephewed too, and so can you.
Uncle, nephew, and nephew will accept compensation via campaign contributions.
Put the nephews on them.
PHP Parody. Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Joe, I'm conflicted about it. I'm telling you, I'm still so conflicted about it. Yeah, we're on air. I don't care. I'm just saying I'm conflicted about it. To this day, I guess if we spoil it, it's at what is it? Almost February. It's your fault. But
it's been almost 2 months since it came
out. For those of you that are longtime listeners of the show, The Last Jedi. I mean, we had many debates about The Last Jedi and what it was going to be. Was it going to be good? Was it going to be bad? And I'll just tell you that I saw it over Christmas. And I totally understand your friends who are like sending you texts like, I'm still processing. I don't know if it was a good movie or a bad movie. I mean, because in many ways, it's just really strange.
There's a lot that goes on in the movie. There's a lot.
I think what you're saying, though, is people are complaining that they took too many risks.
Well, yeah,
too many bold choices.
Okay, so the biggest complaint about The Force Awakens, so Episode 7, the one of the newest trilogy,
like
first one
3 years ago.
Yeah, so the biggest complaint about that movie is that it was too safe. It was too much like A New Hope, Episode 4. It was too much like it. They didn't take enough risks. Where we just talked about that they did take some risks, but the complaint still is they didn't take enough risks. Mm-hmm. They didn't try something. They didn't try a lot of new things. And they just kept with the same old formula.
Yeah.
Of Episode 4. Whereas a lot of complaints that are out there right now about The Last Jedi is that it took way too many risks and it failed on a lot of those risks.
The Last Jedi though was insulting in some places. You get all these spoiler alert, I guess. You see an X-wing on the planet where Luke is. It's beneath water, and you're thinking, oh yeah, he's gonna raise that thing with the Force and take off. Never happens. I mean, there's all these little things that you think you know where the movie's going, and then you get a curveball. Now, some of the curveballs were neat, but I just think, first of all, The Force Awakens, I thought it did take risks, and it was fantastic. I know it's similar to some other movies, but every Star Wars movie has a big Star War at the end of the movie where they're trying to blow something up. I mean, almost every one of them does.
Yeah, it was honestly kind of refreshing. It was kind of refreshing.
Yeah, and they took risks. You had a black stormtrooper who is your main character.
I was talking about episode 8, The Last Jedi, where it's a big Star War where they're trying to blow something up. Well, I thought it was kind of refreshing that they did do that.
The first one took risks. We saw stuff we've never seen before. We saw things we've never seen before, and anyway, it was just if
we're gonna be honest with seeing the X-wing in the water, my first thought was not, oh, Luke's gonna raise it out of the water. My first thought was, okay, this thing is garbage now. It's useless. Like, it can't be used anymore because it's been there since Luke got there, which he's been there for multiple years. So I was like, okay, he's gonna ride the Millennium Falcon out. He's gonna ride with Rey.
Okay, so no, I thought he was gonna raise it because I've seen movies before. And I know a little something about foreshadowing, and that's what that was. That's what that shot was foreshadowing. Folks, I gotta go. I'm gonna be in Blytheville tonight. Mississippi County with Conduit for Action is presenting a legislative session, so I'm excited to be there. If you want to come, if you're in the Northeast Arkansas area listening on KBTM or you're listening online, feel free. It's the Mississippi County Republican Committee. That's tonight, 7 o'clock at the Bush Thornton building. That's 1594 South Division Street in Blytheville, Arkansas. Can't wait to be there tonight. Folks, we're going to be back here tomorrow for Johnny Cash Friday, and we would love for you to start the beginning of your weekend with us here at the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We are building a Liberty Machine. If you want to find out more about it, go to facebook.com/conduitnews. Arkansas, be safe.